Hey, my name is Hazel, and you're probably wondering, why am I holding this camera? Or another question I get a lot is, wow, that footage looks great. What camera do you use? Real quick, I've actually been shooting this entire intro on the Sony ZV-E10, which is another great camera. I highly recommend you check it out. But let me go ahead and switch over to the other camera that I've been using. And this is the Lumix S5 Mark II. And let me tell you, this camera has gotten a lot better within the past year that I've used it. And in my opinion, some of the features rival or even better than the more expensive Sony A7 Mark IV, which I actually planned to buy originally. But now, let me go ahead and tell you why I use this camera instead of the Sony A7 Mark IV. Much like a prominent creator I watch all the time, which I'll go ahead and talk about later in the video, we both use the same philosophy when it comes to cameras. Use the camera that will get the shot, no matter if it's this camera or that one. And in my case, my Lumix does the job well enough for me to continue using it as my main photography and videography camera well into the future. In other words, for me, it gets the shot and it gets the shot well. Let me go ahead and explain that a little bit more in detail though. The Lumix, like a lot of people who own this camera say, shoots, well, taller video, also known as open gate. Usually a camera sensor shoots in a 16:9 aspect ratio, which means that the pixels above and below the video signal are turned off. They don't get used. But with the Lumix, I can shoot using the full height and width of the sensor, allowing people like me to shoot in a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is extremely useful in post-production. Because instead of cropping into the point where it gets super duper cramped, there's more video real estate, like this, for both horizontal and vertical content.
If you know anything about Lumix cameras, you'd know that they have really good in-body image stabilization, or IBIS for short. And to prove that to you, I'm going to sprint from one side of this road to the other with the image stabilization turned on with no post-production. Ready? 3, 2, 1, let's go. Yay! Again. Let's see how that turned out. This camera is really useful for vlogging as well because it completely removes all of those micro jitters when you're going handheld, unlike a lot of other cameras that don't have this level of image stabilization. The other feature that I find really nice is Boost IS, which essentially means I can shoot near tripod style shots handheld. And to prove this to you, I've been shooting this entire shot without a tripod. Okay. The autofocus on this camera is also astounding, having about 779 autofocus points, and with the newest firmware update from Lumix, it includes bird, plane, train, a whole bunch of autofocus modes, which is insane. And no matter how much I moved, the camera stayed pack sharp no matter how close I was.
Now, y'all might be thinking, wow, there don't seem to be many downsides with this camera. It looks and sounds great. Well, unfortunately, there's a downside to pretty much every camera, and for Lumix, it's the lens selection. Even though Panasonic is partnered with Sigma to support all of their Sigma lenses, and believe me when I say this, I love Sigma's glass. It is amazing. The selection is still, well, limited. Harris Heller over on Senpai Gaming actually talked about this, funny enough, so we'll just go ahead and link his video up in the top right-hand corner. Like Harris, I am still kind of jealous of the white lenses and the G Master branding on all of Sony's glass, but all jealousy aside, the lens selection for Lumix is still adequate. I would probably put it at around a C tier in terms of quantity, but the actual optic performance of that glass is insane. If price is a concern for those looking at the A7IV and the S5II, the Lumix has similar features for less, approximately $500 to $1,000 less, depending on the sale. For the price of a brand new Sony A7 Mark IV, I was able to pick up the Lumix S5II and the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 for the same price, which is crazy. But much like comparing apples to Androids, Sony has a much larger ecosystem, and thus people will pay the Sony tax to be a part of the much larger Sony community, compared to a more niche camera ecosystem. I know I've dunked on Sony a lot in this video, maybe too much, but believe me when I say this, Sony is a great camera brand, and the people who use Sony shouldn't be ashamed by using the cameras that they've learned over years of practice. If anything, it's a matter of preference, as well as getting the shot, which I talked about earlier, because one camera brand might get the shot really well, but others might not. And in my case, Lumix just turned out to be the better brand, at least for the time being. Who knows? I might be a Sony user in the next couple years. But for now, I'm gonna stick on the camera that I'm shooting on. For those who are interested in the gear that I've been using, I'll go ahead and link everything down in the description below. And only if you want to, I'd highly request that you go check out my website at hazelislaphoto.com. That's HAZELISLAPHOTO.com. I would really appreciate it. And aside from that, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and let's make something extraordinary together. Peace.